As Sigma empaths evolve, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. They start speaking less, not because they have nothing to say, but because they finally understand the value of their energy, their words, and their presence. They no longer rush to fill silence, justify themselves, fix every emotional problem, or explain their heart to people who aren't willing to understand it. Their quietness becomes intentional. It becomes strength. It becomes clarity. And the fewer words they use, the more powerful they become. Their silence stops being a sign of softness and becomes a sign of awareness, a sign that they now choose what deserves their voice and what no longer does. The world feels this shift immediately. You notice it in the way they listen more than they speak, observe more than they react, and walk away more than they argue. Their silence isn't passive, it's strategic. It protects their peace, sharpens their intuition, and exposes the truth about people around them. Those who once relied on the empath's emotional labor begin to feel uncomfortable because silence reveals everything manipulation tries to hide. And those who genuinely value the Sigma empath feel the depth in their quiet presence, a presence that speaks louder than any long conversation ever could. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something real. Have you noticed yourself speaking less as you grow? Not out of fear, but out of power? Share it in the comments. Your voice might mirror someone else's awakening. And if this message felt like it captured your inner evolution, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath. This is where your silence, your strength, and your growth are finally understood. If you watched until the end, type quiet power so I know you're one of the Sigma empaths whose silence has become their strength. They realize not every emotion or thought deserves to be spoken. As Sigma empaths evolve, one of the first transformations they experience is the understanding that not everything they feel, notice, or sense needs to be expressed. Their younger self believed that sharing their emotions was a form of connection, honesty, and healing. But with time, they learn that speaking every thought drains their energy, exposes their vulnerabilities to the wrong people, and invites misunderstandings they never intended. They begin to see that silence is not suppression, it is selection. It is the mindful choice to protect their inner world rather than scatter it in places where it will be misunderstood, dismissed, or used against them. Their quietness becomes a boundary, a shield that safeguards their emotional landscape from those unprepared to honor it. As this awareness takes root, the Sigma empath starts observing how others speak from impulse, react from insecurity, and express emotions as a way to demand validation. They start to see how easily words can be twisted, how quickly vulnerability can be exploited, and how emotional honesty is not always met with emotional maturity. This understanding teaches them restraint. They no longer feel obligated to explain their feelings in real time or express every reaction that rises within them. Instead, they allow their emotions to settle, their thoughts to organize, and their intuition to guide what truly needs to be said and what should remain unspoken. Their silence becomes thoughtful rather than defensive, intentional rather than fearful. This shift also gives them something they never had before: perspective. By speaking less, they begin hearing more. Not just the words of others, but the motives behind them. They notice the truth between sentences, the insecurity beneath bravado, the manipulation hidden inside kindness. Their silence sharpens their insight. They start understanding people without needing long conversations or emotional confessions. They see patterns, contradictions, and authenticity more clearly because they are no longer distracted by their own need to be heard. Their quietness becomes a tool of perception, a way to understand the world with depth rather than noise. Over time, speaking less becomes a form of emotional mastery. They no longer waste their voice on arguments that go nowhere or on people unwilling to grow. They save their words for conversations that matter, for people who listen, for moments that truly require truth. Their silence no longer feels like withholding, it feels like power. The fewer words they use, the more those words carry weight. And as they rise into a more grounded version of themselves, they realize that expression is not about quantity, it's about intention. Their thoughts, once scattered freely, now become sacred. Their emotions, once exposed too easily, now rest safely inside. The Sigma empath learns that silence is not emptiness, it is strength, it is wisdom, it is evolution. Observing quietly gives them more insight than reacting quickly. As Sigma empaths grow into their power, they begin to understand that their greatest strength isn't in speaking, it's in watching. They realize that reacting quickly is what the old version of them did, the version that cared too much about being understood, soothed, or validated in the moment. But now they see the truth. When they stay silent and observe, people reveal themselves effortlessly. Facial expressions shift, tone cracks, motives slip through half-finished sentences, patterns show up where words try to hide them. Every quiet moment becomes a window into someone's true nature, and the Sigma empath learns that stillness gives them more insight than any fast reaction ever could. This quiet observation isn't passive, it's powerful. It allows the empath to pull back emotionally, detach from the immediate intensity of a situation, and see everything from a higher vantage point. While others speak out of impulse, insecurity, ego, or fear, the Sigma empath watches how others view them from what they hope and from what they see. They sometimes snag. They study how others interact and how others want to see. Someone else thinks how they are. The Sigma empath watches how someone treats a stranger. They watch how someone talks when they want something. They watch how someone behaves when they are angry, insecure, or trying to impress. And in this quiet watching, the empath learns more about a person's character than they ever could through conversation alone. Reactions are temporary, patterns are permanent, and silence allows the empath to see patterns with razor-sharp clarity. With time, this silent insight becomes a kind of emotional intuition that borders on psychic. They no longer fall for sweet words or surface-level charm because they see the intention behind the delivery. They no longer get pulled into conflicts or manipulative conversations because they wait long enough to understand the true motive. Their silence becomes a filter that reveals what others try to hide. When they don't react, people expose themselves, their insecurities, their manipulation tactics, their impatience, their entitlement. The Sigma empath simply watches, letting truth emerge without force. This level of awareness gives them a power most people never expect because they underestimate the strength of someone who chooses stillness over immediate reaction. As they master this skill, the Sigma empath becomes almost impossible to deceive. People mistake their silence for softness, their calmness for cluelessness, their lack of reaction for weakness, and they reveal everything in that miscalculation. The empath learns to delay responses, to feel their emotions without being controlled by them, to listen for what isn't being said. Their insight becomes deep, precise, and unwavering. And because they see more clearly, they choose more wisely who to trust, who to distance themselves from, and who deserves access to their heart. Observing quietly becomes their superpower, a form of strength rooted in awareness, patience, and emotional intelligence. It's in silence that the Sigma empath becomes the most powerful person in the room. They no longer explain themselves to people who aren't willing to understand. One of the greatest shifts in a Sigma empath's evolution is the moment they stop wasting their breath on people who have no intention of understanding them. They used to explain everything, their feelings, their boundaries, their silence, their decisions, thinking that clarity would lead to connection. But over time, they learn a painful truth. Some people don't misunderstand them accidentally. They misunderstand them because it benefits them. Explanation becomes pointless in the presence of unwilling ears, and so the Sigma empath grows into a version of themselves who no longer chases understanding. They conserve their energy for those who listen, for those who care, for those who want to know the truth, not for those who twist it. This shift doesn't come from bitterness, but from wisdom. They realize explanations become meaningless when the person listening is committed to their own narrative. Some people don't want clarity, they want control. Some don't want truth, they want to win. Some don't want understanding, they want to keep the empath small, apologetic, or emotionally accessible on their terms. After enough emotional exhaustion, the Sigma empath stops feeding these dynamics. They stop defending themselves against false assumptions. They stop clarifying their motives. They stop trying to reshape someone's perspective when that person has already decided who they want the empath to be. Silence becomes their answer. Distance becomes their protection. And self-respect becomes their new language. In this transformation, the Sigma empath begins to value peace over being right. They stop entering conversations where the outcome is predetermined. They refuse to justify their boundaries to people who violate them. They no longer unpack their emotions for those who mock, dismiss, or invalidate them. Instead, they observe how people respond to the absence of explanation, and that response reveals everything. Those who truly care seek understanding. Those who always manipulated now panic. Those who relied on the empath's emotional openness feel the loss of access. Those who wanted the empath to stay small can no longer pull them back. Silence exposes truth faster than words ever did. As this new way of living settles, the Sigma empath becomes calmer, stronger, and more grounded. They are no longer hooked by accusations, guilt traps, or emotional pressure. They walk away sooner. They protect their peace first. They choose connection based on mutual respect, not emotional obligation. And when they finally speak, it is with intention, not desperation. Their words carry weight because they are no longer scattered trying to convince the unconvincible. They speak only when it matters to people who matter, and that restraint becomes part of their power, a quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing that their truth does not need constant explanation to be valid. Once a Sigma empath reaches this stage, no one can manipulate their voice again. They decide when, how, and to whom they speak, and that changes everything. Their silence exposes truth, it reveals intentions words would have hidden. One of the most powerful evolutions of a Sigma empath is realizing that silence isn't just a boundary, it's a revelation. When they stop responding immediately, stop filling the space with reassurance, stop softening tension with explanation, something remarkable happens. People begin to show who they really are. Silence becomes a mirror reflecting true intentions with a clarity words often disguise. For most of their life, the Sigma empath listened to what people said because they wanted to believe the best in others. But as they grow wiser, they learn that silence reveals far more than speech. What someone does when the empath stops talking is the truth that words tried to hide. In their quietness, patterns emerge. Some people become agitated because without the empath's soothing presence, their insecurities rise to the surface. Some grow impatient, revealing their entitlement. Some turn manipulative, trying to provoke a reaction to regain control. Others simply disappear, confirming that they were only there for what the empath provided. Silence strips away the mask, the charm, the excuses, the emotional performances. Without the empath's words to stabilize the dynamic, people reveal their character in its rawest form. The Sigma empath watches, not with judgment, but with newfound clarity, understanding that silence is the doorway through which truth walks in. This shift in perception changes everything. They begin to trust actions more than apologies, patterns more than promises, behaviors more than declarations of loyalty. Silence becomes their filter, a way to test the authenticity of those around them. When they don't respond, they observe who respects their space and who invades it, who grows curious and who grows demanding, who stays gentle and who becomes manipulative. The Sigma empath no longer needs to ask questions to understand someone's heart. Silence answers them all. It becomes the ultimate lie detector, exposing who values them and who only valued the access they once had. As this understanding deepens, the Sigma empath becomes nearly impossible to deceive. They no longer get caught in emotional traps or manipulated by sweet words because they've learned to watch what happens when the talking ends. Their silence becomes a form of intelligence, a deliberate tool to read intentions without confrontation. It protects their peace, sharpens their intuition, and strengthens their emotional boundary. They rise into a version of themselves who no longer fears what silence might reveal. They welcome it because silence doesn't create distance, it uncovers truth. And once the Sigma empath sees the truth, they make decisions not from emotion, but from clarity. Their silence becomes their strength, and their strength exposes everything. They speak less because they have mastered emotional control, not because they fear conflict. A Sigma empath's quietness is often misunderstood as avoidance, timidity, or fear of confrontation, but nothing could be further from the truth. They speak less not because they're afraid, but because they've reached a level of emotional control that most people never achieve. They no longer react out of anger, insecurity, or impulse. They no longer let their emotions spill out in the heat of a moment. They no longer engage in battles that don't align with their peace. Their silence is not a retreat, it is a choice, a deliberate, disciplined choice made by someone who has finally learned how to control their inner world without letting the outside world drag them into chaos. This emotional mastery comes from experience, the kind that hurts, teaches, and transforms. Sigma empaths have lived through the consequences of reacting too quickly, trusting too easily, or explaining themselves too openly. They've felt the sting of being misunderstood, the weight of emotional imbalance, and the exhaustion of fighting conflicts that never led to resolution. With time, they learn that power doesn't come from raising their voice, but from rising above what tries to pull them down. They understand that silence in the face of manipulation is louder than any argument. That calmness in the face of provocation is stronger than any defensive speech. That walking away often says more than staying to debate someone committed to misunderstanding them. So they begin to choose their words with intention. They listen more than they speak. They let others reveal themselves before deciding how to respond. Their emotional control allows them to hold space without being consumed by it, to feel deeply without reacting impulsively, and to observe conflict without being dragged into its emotional turbulence. They speak only when their message is clear, their emotions are steady, and their words will carry weight, not chaos. This makes them appear unbothered even in tense situations because they are no longer controlled by the moment, they control themselves within it. And as this mastery grows, people begin to feel their power. Their quiet presence intimidates those who thrive on drama. Their calm reactions confuse those who expect emotional explosions. Their refusal to be pulled into conflict frustrates those who feed on chaos. But the Sigma empath doesn't engage, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. They know that reacting gives access, and they no longer grant access to anything that threatens their peace. Their controlled silence becomes a message. I choose where my energy goes. In the end, they speak less because they have nothing to prove and nothing to defend. Their strength is internal, their clarity is grounded, their voice is intentional, and when they do speak, people listen because their words come from a place of mastery, not reactivity. That is the true power of a Sigma empath who has learned to control their emotions without losing their heart. Their quietness becomes influence. People listen more when they finally do speak. One of the most striking transformations in a Sigma empath's journey is how their quietness slowly turns into influence. They are not loud leaders, not dominant personalities, not the type to force attention or demand space, yet people naturally lean in when they speak. Their words carry weight precisely because they don't use them recklessly. Their silence creates gravity. Their quiet presence commands respect without ever asking for it. The Sigma empath learns that the less they speak, the more meaningful their voice becomes. People pay attention not because they fear them, but because they feel the intention, wisdom, and emotional depth behind every word they choose to share. This influence doesn't happen overnight. It grows as others notice how the Sigma empath handles life, calmly, thoughtfully, without unnecessary drama or emotional chaos. They see how the empath listens deeply, observes carefully, and processes situations with rare emotional intelligence. While others rush to respond, the Sigma empath pauses. While others talk to be heard, they speak only when there is something real to say. This restraint sets them apart. People begin to realize that when the Sigma empath does speak, it is worth listening. There is insight, truth, and clarity in their voice. And that makes their words more impactful than someone who speaks constantly but says nothing meaningful. Over time, their quietness becomes a presence that fills a room. Their calm energy influences the emotional temperature of those around them. When they speak in moments of tension, people listen because they trust their judgment. When they offer advice, it resonates because it comes from observation, not ego. When they set a boundary, it holds because they speak with conviction, not confrontation. Even their silence is felt, not as avoidance, but as a form of strength. Their quietness creates a space where truth can emerge, where emotions can settle, where people can reflect. They don't force influence, they emanate it. And the impact of this is profound. Manipulators lose power around them because they cannot provoke or control someone so grounded. Leaders seek their perspective because their insight cuts through noise. Friends trust them because their words are sincere and measured. Partners value them because they listen with intention and speak with purpose. The Sigma empath becomes someone whose approval matters, whose guidance shapes decisions, whose silence carries messages people can't ignore. Their quietness stops being a shield and becomes a language of confidence, wisdom, and emotional mastery. They no longer need to persuade, argue, or prove anything. Their presence speaks louder than their voice ever could. And when they finally do speak, the room shifts. People pause. They absorb every word. Because a Sigma empath's voice is no longer just sound. It is influence born from silence, power shaped by restraint, and truth spoken only when it truly matters. If you've ever felt yourself speaking less, not because you're shutting down, but because you're growing, then you're already stepping into your Sigma empath evolution. Silence becomes your shield, your filter, your strength. You don't waste your voice anymore. You don't argue to be understood. You don't explain your worth to anyone who can't recognize it. The quieter you become, the more you see, and the less you say, the more power you carry. This is the moment when your voice becomes intentional and your silence becomes influence. Before you go, let me ask you something real. Have you noticed yourself becoming quieter as you grow stronger? And did it change how people treated you? Share your experience in the comments. Someone who's learning to embrace their silence needs to hear your story. And if this message felt like it described your inner evolution perfectly, make sure you subscribe to Brainy Empath. This is where your growth, intuition, and emotional mastery are understood and celebrated. If you watched until the very end, type silent strength so I know you're one of the Sigma empaths whose silence holds real power.